Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri. Welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And I am so delighted today. Not only do we have one guest, but we have two guests today. And I know that they are probably amazing rock stars, and we're going to hear about their journey today. But our guest today is Johnny Dzubak.
Yes.
And did I get it? Yes. Oh, yes. And AJ Harbinger. And they are the co-founders of a company called Art of Charm. So welcome to the show.
Thank you,
Thank
Teri.
you for having us.
Okay, so let's hop in. I want to hear from both of you, kind of your journey. You know, what did you have to overcome to get to where you are at today with this brilliant company and brilliant concept that you guys have created? I'll let one of you, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, perfect.
So if you look behind me, you see a guitar amp, you see a picture of Iggy Pop back here. You see Animal from the Muppets, my favorite drummer in the world. He was modeled after Keith Moon, by the way, from The Who. And my life had started out in that path of wanting to play music, work in the music industry. I grew up in a very arty family. My dad played in bands. So as a kid, I grew up with the floorboards reverberating from the rehearsals downstairs, which made it difficult for me to really get excited about anything else. And with that music and it coursing, feeling it and having it in my blood, I grew up wanting to work in the music industry. And in my 20s, I got to do that at a high level. I was working in rock and roll clubs. I was going on tour. I was involved in music in every aspect of my life. And it was great. And I was doing what I wanted to do. However, moving into my later 20s, the music industry, as I had grown up to know it, was rapidly changing before my eyes. And you could even make the argument that it didn't even exist how I used to know it. And then looking into the future of what it was going to be. And at this time, social media wasn't fully developed as it is now. This is LimeWire, Friendster, MySpace was just taking off. And all these changes had me questioning, do I want to continue doing this? Because the tradition, the ritual that went along with music, it didn't apply anymore. I saw music slowly becoming more of a disposable art, a background soundtrack. It wasn't the center of the lives that I had grown up to know it. And I needed to ask myself some hard questions because I had dedicated my life to that industry and to that field. And I turned to self-development as an opportunity to reflect on my life and ask myself hard questions that I never had to ask myself before. My plan was laid out. So with that disruption came some reflection, and one obsession rolled into the next, and I became obsessed with self-development as I started implementing these small ideas that had such a large impact on my life. And I got so excited about it that I just dumped my life into self-development as an opportunity to grow, enrich my world around me, and then to help others. And that is how I had met AJ.
Wonderful. And how about for you, AJ? What's been your path, your story?
Yeah, my story is a little more analytical. Grew up with a single dad and very shy, introverted father, and that rubbed off on me. And as I was following my dad's hopes and dreams for me to become a doctor, I got to graduate school, and really poor communication skills and a lack of confidence stopped my career dead in its tracks. I grew up thinking that being a blue collar background like my dad just had to outwork everyone and hustle harder, and I realized in graduate school that it was all about powerful communication and having the confidence to actually speak up in key moments in my career. And I didn't do that. And I saw my peers getting opportunities that I felt I deserved. I started to feel like an imposter. And that basically started my self development journey of why am I holding myself back? And why is it so much easier for everyone else around me who I thought truly I was a little bit more talented than and I deserved those opportunities. So Johnny and I crossed paths in DC. He was coaching for another company at the time, and I had started a podcast really discussing communication skills, their role in social life and dating, and certainly in your career, and how to overcome imposter syndrome. And I love the work that Johnny was doing at the company he was in, and we decided to team up and build the Art of Charm together.
That is wonderful. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about the art of charm because my background, I was a therapist for 24 years. And I combined that with energy psychology and then applied the principles of quantum physics to work with. Now I work with women entrepreneurs. And I tell people that there's what I have found in my journey is that there's kind of like these top 5 blocks that hold us back. And from really achieving what we are capable of doing. And the imposter syndrome is one of those because, I have some of my clients, they have a very, very successful business. They, are at that 2.1 or even up to the 5 million. I have one lady that has generated $18 billion and she does not see her worth and is questioning her ability. And I'm like what? Like from the outside looking in, I'm like, wait, you've mastered it, right? And so when we're working together, I'm like, gosh, I can't wait till we get to that place where she's a little bit further along, and just what can she create then?
Clicks. Yeah.
We tap back into our power, right? So I love the fact, and I even love the fact that you, to have coming from a male's perspective, right? And choosing that personal development path, because I don't think that that's necessarily an easy one. And as women, we can talk about, yeah, we have all this self-doubt or, these things, and we tend to isolate ourselves. And I just was having this conversation with a good friend, and how we were talking about like the work that I do, the work that you guys do is very much in alignment. The biggest challenge that I find when working with my audience is having those conversations around this vulnerability, because no one wants to raise their hand and says, yes, I'm not where I'd like to be. And I believe that I'm self-sabotaging myself. Like, right. No one wants to like sign up and, have and admit that. Right. I'm curious for you guys, like, what have you guys noticed and seen in your journey? And it sounds like you guys focus mostly on men, but it sounds like what I get the sense of, it's open to anyone. Is that correct? Fair to say?
Well, we believe that everyone deserves better relationships. We started working 15 years ago with men primarily, and obviously that speaks to our experience and that resonated with our audience. But as we've grown as a company and realized all the different touch points that communication skills have in your life, in your career, in your social life, in your relationship with your partner, how important it is that you communicate your wants and needs and understand how others are communicating to you. So for us, a big part of this, exactly like you, is having those tough conversations. And unfortunately, we live now, as Johnny touched on earlier, surrounded by social media, where everywhere you look, it's a highlight reel of someone else's experience. So that just reinforces that imposter syndrome. Yeah. Everyone else around you seems to make it look effortless, easy, and have it all. And you might have all of those things, but internally you're struggling with that self-doubt.
Yeah.
I think also to go with this is at a very early age, we tend to get put on our path. And And we just get to it, and we don't start asking ourselves, why am I not where I need to be, until we hit a wall and we've tried everything to get through that wall, and we realize that nothing we've tried is working. And so now we have to go outside of our toolbox to find more tools, different tools that may work. And so we begin to start asking questions. And when you start asking those questions and you realize that you're stuck at that wall due to decisions that you've made, and you start rearranging it and your life and taking responsibility to other areas that maybe you haven't looked at before. And once those doors get open, it opens for everything that you're doing. My diet, how I go to sleep, my morning routine, how I'm interacting with people. And so it takes a little while for folks to admit or get to a place where they're comfortable with saying, I need help. And once they're there, those conversations are a bit easier. They can still be difficult, but at least you're open to facilitating that conversation or having it. But it certainly comes with a lot of difficulty. And for us, in the podcast, it's about having those conversations on the podcast so people are willing to have those conversations with themselves. And then, of course, when they're coming in to see us and when they're in any of our programs, they are very open to these ideas of changing, making, looking at things differently, and asking themselves hard questions, willing to answer them.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you guys are creating a community, right? And it's a safe community. And so when we start to step into that community, we are being supported, right, on all aspects. And there's really, I can say this for myself, that there's never been like something that's someone's brought up that it hasn't been like, no, let's address this. Recently I do these calls on Tuesday mornings, and I had someone be really vulnerable and share some pretty tough stuff. And she came back and she reached out to me literally like an hour later. She was like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. And I said, what? And I said, again, she started creating this story about, and it was completely unrelated. And I was like, can we test this out? Because I want her to see that. Like, so we brought it back to the next conversation, and she was able to test this out. And everyone, not a single person thought she was oversharing or like whatever. They were like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. Right. Thank you, because like that resonated with me in this way. And so I just think it's the power of having community and power of, being vulnerable in a safe place, and really to test that information out. Because a lot of times, again, it comes back to our old stories of what everyone, like what we're making up, and our brains are so powerful in the ability to create really fascinating and interesting stories, that aren't necessarily in alignment with our greatest and highest good.
It's easy to get
community.
And it's easy to become removed from our values. And when you're removed from your values, you start questioning everything that you're doing because you're not aligned with anything. And when people find their values again, they construct their behaviors, how they're going to go about things, their worldview to those values. And it makes it easy for people to progress, to do what they need to do without questioning themselves, because they're like, I'm doing the right thing. This is my value, so I need to engage with it. But when you're removed, you're questioning everything because you have no guidance.
Yeah. You don't have that guidance, that guiding star for you. AJ, you were going to jump in there.
Yeah. Well, we're huge fans of acceptance commitment therapy.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
acceptance is understanding that self-doubt is normal. And that's what we're trying to normalize. And I think your member of that call realized that, and the follow-up call that, hey, that self-doubt and me expressing it and then feeling it after the call, everyone in the room is also feeling it. And we have all these fantastic guests on their show, and they talk about their own journey of self-doubt. So it's easy to look at those who are further ahead than us and say, well, they don't have it. Why am I struggling with it? But self-doubt is normal. We need to accept it. And imposter syndrome just means you care, right? You don't have anxiety unless you care. You're not anxious about whether the grocery store has oranges. You're anxious about getting on stage and doing a great job. You're anxious about helping your clients and over delivering because you care.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, like, anytime we are expanding and we are pushing the envelope and we are growing, like you were saying, Johnny, earlier, it's like when we're doing that personal development and we're growing and expanding, like we are going, if we are not growing and expanding, we will be the same. And that is, some people choose that, and there's no
Yep.
judgment of that, right? That's called settling in life, right? But when we are growing and expanding, we are going to constantly rub up against uncomfortability. We're going to constantly rub up to things that kind of make us go, "Eh," and they want to, like, we want to, we want to, what's the word? Shrink in, because it's uncomfortable, and the brain's going like, what the heck are you doing, Teri? Like,
Right.
but I truly see that as the way I kind of flip that and talk about a different perspective changes. Like, this is growth. This is called growth. This is called expansion. And so, I don't believe that we can have expansion and growth without having uncomfortability being addressed at some point, and so I see it as a positive thing. And so, yeah,
Well, we
so
pick up so much from the way we were raised, the environment we were in growing up.
yeah,
And what we're all about is growth in your communication skills. Much of
yeah,
the patterning that I had growing up around my dad being shy reinforced that I was shy. And
yeah,
now I don't think I'm shy anymore. I'm still introverted in that it is exhausting for me after socializing. Like, I was at an event last night and I came back pretty wiped, but I'm no longer shy. I don't identify as that any longer. And we can
yeah,
shed those identities when we grow. When we grow in
yeah,
our communication skills, we can relate to people in a deeper way. We can bring new people into our lives who have opposing viewpoints, different worldviews.
yeah.
That's what we're all about at the Art of Charm. When we strengthen our communication skills, it opens up so many other opportunities in our life that we previously had blinders to because we were so focused on playing small.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was extraordinarily shy. And there was something like, so it was in sixth grade. I had this kind of, now I look back and I say, okay, it was a download. It was, some divine guidance happening, but I wasn't aware of it at that time. And I said, gosh, I am so extraordinarily shy. I have got to figure this out. So I signed up for the only thing you could not be shy for. Do you guys want to take a guess of what it was? In sixth grade, going into seventh grade.
Ooh, speaking or debate.
Close.
Drama.
I signed up for cheerleading.
Oh,
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
And I went to a small school, and so we had to try out in front of the high school students, and then they brought in five uh, university cheerleaders, and they came in and voted us in. And I always joked, I said, I don't know if they felt bad for me or they just needed an extra body on the team, but somehow I made it on the team.
You made it in.
And I was terrified. Like, I was like this little peanut on this giant like auditorium with, hundreds of people looking at me. And I'm pretty sure, and I was like, they couldn't even hear me. I was just doing some actions, and they said, okay, she has a body, let's put her on the team. But for the first 3 months, I totally, and I'm not necessarily a huge component of faking it till you make it kind of thing, but that's what I did, and I'm like, but I stepped into it. And I think sometimes we have to look at, and listen to, being called to do something and stepping into that. And sometimes that's really uncomfortable. And looking back, I'm like, I don't even know where the courage came from that, because I must have lost my mind during that time, because it was terrifying.
you can be training for something your whole entire life, but the moment you do it in front of somebody, that changes the context. For
Yeah.
myself, had been playing in bands and rehearsing in my room and with the band from all of my teenage years. And I remember when I moved to North Carolina to play what I considered my first real show as an adult at the club, that I got the gig in our band. I was so nervous that my legs were shaking so much that I wasn't sure if I was going to fall during the set. And I was so mad at myself. I'm like, I've been preparing for this my whole entire life. Why do I feel this way? Well, certainly those feelings subsided the more I put myself in front of people and the more we had done it. But it blew my mind how nervous I was for something that I felt internally I was so well prepared for.
Yeah.
You
Well, it
make a
changes the
great point,
dynamics.
because
Yeah.
those life-changing moments, without a doubt, are typically preceded by moments of fear, anxiety, terror. You were terrified to do it. And
Yeah.
now you look back on the other side of being terrified and you're like, that changed my life. That changed the
Was
trajectory of
Yeah.
my life. So if you're listening to this and you have that nagging fear, that thing that you're rubbing up against, but you're afraid to take that step, just realize that there's power in the other side, life changing power in the other side.
Absolutely. I think we're all talking and sharing from our own personal stories, like these things that we had to overcome. And it wasn't an easy like, oh, and I think, Johnny, back to your point is, there's something to be said about practice, right? And then there's something to be said in when we change the environment, because you mastered the practice of your garage, you mastered the practice of your bedroom, you mastered the practice, right? But now we change the dynamics and the environment, and now it's like mastering that practice. And I think sometimes, and I was naive about this when I was first speaking on stages, I was like terrified of speaking. And now people see me and they're like, wow, look where you've come. And I'm like, yeah, my first target was to stay vertical and not pass out. Okay. So like I went from, having that target of staying vertical and now adding some skill set, but I do think there's value in practicing it, whether it's practicing
of
new
course.
communication skills, practice if, whatever that might be, because it's working that muscle, whatever that muscle might be, is working that muscle, because we expect ourselves to be perfect right out of the gate. And if I meet someone like that, I'll definitely introduce you guys, but
Well,
it doesn't exist.
as soon as there is tension and pressure put on your performance, you are reduced to the level of your training. So that's why rehearsal is so important. As bad as I thought we were on that very first show, when we got paid that evening, they asked if we would like to play again the next week. Now, that blew my mind. I was sure that this was the last gig ever, right? In that moment.
Right.
But we were so well rehearsed that regardless of how nervous I was and how bad I felt that I performed, because I know how good we could have been, there was a certain level of us being able to hold it together at some point because of the rehearsals. And that's why for everything that we do at the Art of Charm, in our programs, it's about having our clients get repetition, have practice with all the conversational tools and strategies that allow for amazing interactions.
I think that is such gold right there, is like, we have to master those skills. We have to become, and that way when the situation changes, it doesn't matter, because I still have that foundation, and that foundation is so critical.
Yeah, the low stakes experience over time makes the high stakes easier. And when
That's
it comes to
brilliant.
communicating, let's be honest, many of us don't want to make mistakes around our peers, our friends, our family, our coworkers on a date. We don't want the mistakes to be there. So where are you practicing your communication skills? If you're not practicing in low stakes, it's asking a lot to nail it on the first time you're on stage. It's asking a
Yeah.
lot to nail it
Yeah.
in the boardroom when you're involved in that presentation.
Yeah.
So having opportunity in your life to practice these skills, to practice communication, pays off in the end when the stakes really matter.
Yeah. Oh, that's so brilliant. Okay, from both of you, okay? I want you both to answer this. What is one thing that you wish you would have known, or one thing that was kind of like a game changer for you in your life, kind of based on the work that you do now, that our listeners can take away with for them today?
Um,
So for me, the biggest shift that I made was just focusing on one great conversation.
Hmm.
When I was shy and struggling with going into networking events and going into the room, I had this vision in my mind that I had to get everyone to like me and I had to have tons of great interactions to feel good. And that put so much pressure on myself that I could never meet those expectations. And
Yeah.
of course, I'd have a rotten time. I'd sit on my phone, I'd look to leave, I would not enjoy myself. The shift for me was every event is just about one great conversation. And that creates so much positive momentum to the next conversation, to having a great night, and opens up so many opportunities. And that's what I learned from Johnny. Being introverted, avoiding conversation, I was just passing by all of these opportunities in life and spending time around Johnny and seeing him, I'll interact with someone in the elevator. He'll interact with someone sitting next to us at the bar. He'll interact, and all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, the power in those small conversations and the doors they open over time just compound. And who doesn't want compounding opportunities in their life,
Yeah.
especially if you're in business?
Absolutely, absolutely. My mom always tells me, she's like, "You haven't met a stranger yet." And I said, "I'm waiting. I'm waiting one day. I'll meet a stranger." But you're right. Like I like straight up conversations all the time. When you're flying and stuff, everyone hates the middle seat. But I mean, I prefer the window seat. But if a packed plane, I don't mind one bit sitting down in that middle seat because I get now two people to talk to.
Yeah,
So if one's a dud, I got a second chance. And sometimes they're both like amazing beings. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, right? Like it's amazing, right? I
much
flew
better than
back.
talking to the window.
Oh my goodness. I flew back from Dallas, last night. And I was sitting and I was setting my intentions because, like, on this trip, there's a certain employee that I want to bring on to my team and expand my team. And literally sat down to this next person. She's like, "Yeah, I'm moving to Denver in the next few months. I'm transitioning out of my company. I'm looking for a new position in XYZ." And it's exactly what I'm looking for. So I said, it might be
Incredible.
weird to do a job interview on the plane. So why don't we, reach out and we'll do it official through Zoom. But you never know who's around you and what, like you said, the opportunities. So, okay, Johnny, your turn. Such good juiciness here.
Um, so many different points had flooded me when you asked that question, but I guess I'll go with the one that certainly was the beginning of my self-development phase and then allowed for other things to happen, which was every once in a while you hear or see something that changes your perspective or how you go about things in life. And I remember somebody telling me that happiness was on me, that I could just be happy. Now, I had grown up thinking that I had to achieve happiness, and my road to achieve it was going to be through music and performing and making records in the music business. And I would not be happy until that was achieved. So that led me to being frustrated, angry, and pissed off all the time. And I was probably told this several times, but it never registered until this moment. I was bartending one night and one of my regular customers, and he wanted to know what my problem was as usual. And, and of course I'm complaining and everything. And he's like, you could just be happy. In fact, when I look at you, I see a person who has all the reasons in the world to be happy. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was in my 20s. I'm like, right, like, why do I need to be angry? In fact, I have so much. And it was at that moment that I just decided I'm going to be happy. Now, there was a lot of work to do to reassure and for those ideas, but that was the moment that things changed. I went into each day as a different person rather than avoiding the next day. I got excited for the next day and what was going to come from that.
Well, I think both of you you talk about this is you find one win and you build on that win, right? If we focus on the positive, we're going to start finding more positive stuff come into our life. If we focus on the negative, we're going to have the same results. We're going to be finding things that are negative. So, starting one place, having that one powerful conversation, building that muscle and stopping there if you need to and say, okay, that was successful. And I love having people like write down the evidence, like write down, how it showed up, what it felt like, and really stepping into that. Cause I think so many times we'll have a success and then we kind of zoom by it. We're like, oh, now we're looking for the other shoe to drop, right? Instead of like really focusing on like, wow, like that took a lot of courage for me to like completely go up to a complete stranger and have that conversation, or put myself out there, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't matter. Like I know lots of people that are extroverts that still don't like having those communications and vice versa, right? And so, but it's the power of being consistent and working that muscle, going back to practice and going back to looking at the evidence and just continuing to grow and expand outside your comfort zone.
Well, I was
Reflecting
certainly
on where you've come from. That's a key
Yeah.
point there, because
Yeah.
many of us are so focused at the top of the mountain and just staring at what's ahead of us, we don't realize how far we've climbed.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's a great reminder.
And for a lot of people, and myself included in this, when I was younger, I was able to rationalize cognitive distortions with more cognitive distortions until it was the cobwebs were so thick that I couldn't see my way out. And it's incredibly important to realize that you can continue stacking on reasons to be upset, reasons why things aren't working, but all that does is beat you up, demoralize you, and keeps you from reaching. By stacking the positives, celebrating the small wins, now you're working your way in the other direction. And we always say that, like a locomotive, these thoughts, these actions, these behaviors are barreling down the track in one way. And if you're going to change them, the first thing you have to do is slow the train down to a stop to get it moving in another direction. You just don't flip a switch and it's off to the races in another direction. Yeah. There's work to be done. But much like the barreling train down one way, once you get it barreling the other way, everything speeds up, and now that is automatic. So
yeah, that's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah.
The work is worth it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, Johnny, AJ, it has been absolutely delightful having you guys on the show. I could just sit and have a conversation all day long with you. Maybe the next time we'll invite you back and have another conversation. Where can folks find you? What's the best way for them to connect with you, collaborate, and just reach out and get involved with you?
Yeah, well, obviously, if you're listening to a podcast, check out our podcast, The Art of Charm, where we delve deep into the science behind powerful communication, becoming unstoppable, and really unlocking your X factor to be extraordinary. And all of our show fans and clients, they're tired of ordinary. They want to be seen as extraordinary. They know internally they're extraordinary. How do we show that to the world? That's what we're all about at The Art of Charm. And if you're interested in any of our coaching and training, that's at theartofcharm.com. Thank you so much for having us. This was a blast.
Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for, really being the light in the world, because I think truly one of my big messages is having people have a bigger impact in the world, and more so than any other time in our nation's history. We require and demand that we have more people wake up and, step into their brilliance, step into their powers. And so I love that you are, really connecting with men on this level. And I think it's powerful work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Light. Thank you.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.